Hello everyone, we are Magarena Espinosa and Joaquin Telles, and we're going to talk about a paper called Exploring Principles of User-Centered Agile Software Development, a literature review by Manuel Brel, Hendrik Meth, Alexander Mech, and Karl Werder. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the context and objective of the paper we had to read. So in the last decade, software development has been characterized by two major approaches: the Agile software development, which we are going to call ASD, and the user-centered design, which we are going to call UCD. The objective is to combine these two, but how? Hybrid development models, referred to as user-centered agile software development, or UCASD, propose to combine the merits of both approaches in order to design software that is both useful and usable. This is taking the benefits of both ASD and UCD and combining them in a way so that they don't get in the way of each other. But this is not so easy, because as we are going to see, these methods often contradict each other, making them harder to use together. The study paper's objective is to give us an idea of the current state of user-centered agile software development and to derive generic principles from it. And the question that we are trying to answer is, which principles constitute a user-centered agile software development approach?
What is user-centered development? UCD is an iterative design process in which designers focus on the users and their needs in each phase of the design process. Some of the key points are: focus on end user, meaning that the software is made for the end user and not just focus on functionality. Continuous end user evaluation. The end user must be part of the development process, giving constant feedback. Iterative, the development should be made in iterations or sprints. Usability over usefulness. As the focus is on the end user, the usability experience must be prioritized over the functionality.
So, what is agile software development? ASD is a process used in software development whose objective is to be able to respond to unpredictable changes and limit the development strictly to activities that add business value for the customer. Some of the key points of ASD are: focus on the customer. This states that all the development is made so that it satisfies the customer requirements. Adaptive to customer needs over time, so that if the customer wants to make changes midway or wants something made in another way, it can be done without major difficulties. It is scalable in terms of functionality, so the customer is always seeing an increment in completeness of the project. And it prioritizes usefulness of the software over the usability of it. So the end user is not a priority in this method.
About the research method, the investigators did a systematic review of the literature of UCASD. The identified works are analyzed using a coding scheme that differentiates four levels of UCASD: the process, the practices, people or social, and technology dimensions. Through subsequent synthesis, we derive generic principles of UCASD. In the selection process of the literature, the first step is the automated search in databases to retrieve relevant publications. The second stage is to exclude publications based on titles and abstracts. This process left 1,043 publications. In the first stage, we obtain primary papers and exclude publications based on content, like articles or tutorials. This leaves us with 148 publications. The last stage is quality assessment, that left a final number of 83 publications.
Analysis. In the paper, All of the literature that remained was classified into 5 types of integration for UCASD. First is the process integration, which involves the merging and synchronizing of independent UCD and ASD processes. So it is the intention of using the two of them simultaneously without colliding with each other. Practices integration. It refers to the use of a UCD process and adding the practices of an ASD process or vice versa. People integration and social integration, which were combined to one classification because the differences were very small and the literature found was not enough to separate them in different categories. And last but not least, technology integration, which is the use of technological means to support and coordinate activities. In this item is, for example, the use of a new framework to use in a better way the process of UCASD.
The principles of UCASD are divided in process principles and practice for principles. In process principles, we have separate product discovery and product creation, iterative and incremental design and development, and parallel interwoven creation tracks. In practices for principles, we have continuous stakeholder involvement and artifact-mediated communication.
So the first principle is separated product discovery and product creation. Product discovery is the previous research of the design, end user and customer needs, and product creation is the development of this product. While UCD promotes extensive upfront analysis of user requirements and the design of the user's interaction with the system, ASD focuses on delivering a work code at the expense of an exhaustive planning and design phase. This is giving priority to usefulness instead of usability. 42 of the included publications discuss the necessity of upfront design effort, and a total of 39 articles argue that while an extensive upfront design is against Agile principles, little upfront design, or LDUF, is needed for successful UCD efforts in an Agile environment. So here we see a first attempt to combine the two processes. So what we learn from this principle is that in order to deliver a product that is valuable to the customer and end user, that has both usefulness and usability, these practices should be separated in user-centered agile software development.
Iterative and incremental design and development. Both ASD and UCD promote an iterative and incremental approach to software development. An iterative approach allows for the product under development to be refined based on the feedback collected at an earlier stage. In incremental strategy, the scope of the system grows progressively with the addition of consecutive functionalities. 33 of the included papers explicitly discuss design or development iterations. User-centered agile approaches should support software design and development in short iterations and in an incremental manner.
Next, we have the principle of parallel interwoven creation tracks. So when the design team starts their first iteration, the development team, as a restricted upfront phase of analysis and design allows for specifying the user interaction only for the most important features of a system. Features with a lower priority have to be considered in later iterations in parallel to development. It is necessary to conduct user research and prepare designs for the upcoming development cycle at least one iteration ahead of the development team. So this is when the design team starts their first iteration, the development team hasn't started yet. When the design team is in their second iteration, the development team starts their first iteration and so on. 18 of the publications included in the literature review support this principle. Design activities need to start one sprint ahead of the development activities, given the parallelization mechanism need to be adopted to assure the synchronization and integration of such tracks. So they have to be coordinated so the tracks don't collide with each other and each team can act individually in their designated tasks.
Then we have continuous stakeholder involvement. While ASD is inherently people-centric and the active involvement of stakeholders is one of its essential elements, it lacks a clear distinction between a customer and the end-of-user software. UCD approaches require direct and unmediated contact with the end user of the software. 17 of the included publications promote direct involvement of stakeholders. Stakeholders' continuous involvement in the design and development process is one of the main commonalities of UCD and ASD. This means that we need the feedback of the stakeholder during the process of the development, and we also need the end-of-user feedback.
Artifact-mediated communication. Artifacts are central means of communication for agile and user-centered software development. While ASD focuses on working prototypes, UCD provides different artifacts to document stakeholder needs and communicate design ideas. 40 of the publications included in the literature review prototypes. For example, visual instantiations of the design concept is the most frequently occurring artifact type. Other types of artifacts, for example, for UCD includes sketches, mockups, wireframes, and for ASD they include documentation, user stories, personas, scenarios, etc. In user-centered agile approaches, tangible and up-to-date artifacts should be used to document and communicate product and design concepts. This is for the development and the design team to keep track of what they need to do and how the final product must be delivered.
In conclusion, we have the next reflections. Fast prototyping, individual inquiry, formal tests, and heuristic evaluations are recognized as the most frequent usability practices. Specifically, looking at distributed teams, digital low-fidelity prototypes are suggested as a powerful concept to improve the communications of designers and developers. This means sketches, user stories. The translation of UCASD practices from academia into practice remains challenging. This means that there is a lot of theory behind, but there is still not enough practice to make it real. A clear definition for the responsibility of the user perspective within a Scrum team is needed. It is common to have, for example, the product owner from the perspective of the client, but there is not a defined role for the end user to be represented. Overall, contextual factors such as organizational support and cultural change are not to be neglected, as they may lead to power struggles between usability professionals and developers, or a lack of required usability resources for the actual work.
So this has been our presentation. We hope you could learn more about the principles of user-centered agile software development, and goodbye.
We'll be expecting your questions.